Hi, I'm Sister Suzanne, and this Sunday is a very special day. We call it the Feast of the Body and Blood of Jesus. And as you see, I'm holding a basket with bread in it, which reminds us of Eucharist, the Mass. And so we're celebrating Jesus, who came to us and gave us his body and blood as food for us. And so in this story of Jesus, on this Sunday, we're going to explore what that really means. What does the Mass, and we haven't been able to go to Mass for a lot of weeks. Soon, though, we will. And it will be wonderful to return back to our churches and to celebrate Eucharist with Jesus. Today I'd like to offer this video for all the children who will be receiving Jesus for the first time in First Eucharist come this fall. And so you must be wondering, now how am I going to do that this week when I don't even have any puppets? But I have two wonderful stories. The first one is called Stone Soup. Isn't that an odd title? Stone Soup. Imagine having soup made of stones. Now let's just see. The question is, why would Sister Suzanne read this story? And it goes with Eucharist, with the Mass, with today's feast. We'll find out. 3 monks. Now, a monk is a person, that's a man, but he's a little bit like Sister Suzanne, who is a sister. And these monks, they live in a community the way I do with other sisters. They were going along, and their names, they're from Asia, and their names were Huck, Luck, and Sue. And they traveled along a mountain road. They talked about cat whiskers, the color of the sun, and giving. The special word is giving. What makes one happy, Sue? Asked Huck, the youngest monk. Old Sue was the wise monk, and he said, let's find out. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to find out what makes us happy. The sound of the bell brought their gaze to the rooftops of the village below. They could not see from so high above that the village had been through many hard times. Famine, which means they didn't have enough food, floods, and there was also a lot of sickness, maybe like the pandemic with us. And there were many villages that were weary. They were untrusting of strangers. They had even become suspicious of their neighbors. Uh-oh, I don't know if the monks will be welcome in this village. The people didn't like strangers at this time. But the villagers worked hard, but only for themselves. There was a farmer, a tree merchant, a scholar, a seamstress, a doctor, a carpenter, and many others. But they had little to do with one another. They probably were safe distancing, and so they didn't mingle with anybody. When the monks reached the foot of the mountain, they disappeared. Oh, the villagers disappeared into their houses as soon as they saw the monks come in. No one came to the gates to greet them. They don't sound very welcoming. And when the people saw them enter the village, they closed their doors tight, very tight. They just peeked through the windows at them. The monks knocked on the first door. There was no answer. Then the house went dark. They knocked on the second door, and the same thing happened. It happened again and again from one house to the next. They would knock, and there was no answer. These people do not know happiness, they all agreed. But today, said Sue, his face bright as the moon, we will show them how to make stone soup. Aha! So they gathered twigs and branches and made a fire. They placed a small tin pot on top and filled it with water from the village below. That was all they had, was this small bowl. A brave little girl who had been watching came to them. What are you doing? She asked. We are gathering twigs, said Luck. We are making a fire, said Huck. We are making stone soup, and we need 3 round and smooth stones, said Sue. Here's the little girl. The little girl helped the monks look around the courtyard until they found just the right ones. Then they put them in the water to cook. Stones like these. 1, 2, 3. We can't put too much water in this bowl. Oh, these stones will make excellent soup, said Stu. But this very small pot won't make much, I'm afraid. The little girl said, my mother has a much bigger pot. And so the little girl ran to her house and she started to take her pot. Her mother asked what she was doing, and she said, the 3 strangers are making soup from stones. They need our biggest pot. Said the girl's mother. Stones are easy to come by. I'd like to learn how to do that. And so the little girl brought her mom's biggest pot. Now that's going to be some soup. The monks poked the coals. As smoke drifted up, the neighbors peered out of the windows. The fire in the large pot in the middle of the village was a true curiosity. One by one, the people of the village came out to see just what this stone soup was. Wow, their pot was even much bigger. That little girl really got her mom's biggest pot. Of course, old-style stone soup should be well seasoned with salt and pepper, said Huck. That is true, said Luck as he stirred the giant pot filled with water and stones. But we have, oh dear, do we have anything like salt and pepper? I have some salt and pepper, said the scholar, his eyes big with curiosity. He disappeared and came back with salt and pepper and even a few spices. Sue took a taste. The last time we had stone soup of this size and color, carrots would have really made it so much better. Carrots? Said the woman from the back. I may have a few carrots, but just a few. And off she ran. She returned with as many carrots as she could carry and dropped them into the pot. Look, first she said she only had a few, and then she brought all that she could find. Do you think it would be better with celery? Said Huck. Oh, yes, maybe celery would taste good, said a farmer, and he hurried off. He returned in a moment with all these stalks of celery, and he dropped them into the bubbling soup. Now, that's a fine soup, he said. The villagers all nodded their heads as the smell was very agreeable. Mmm. But if only I had some potatoes, said Sue, rubbing his chin. Several villagers licked their lips. A few dashed away and returned with the potatoes. They also brought some noodles and pea pods and some cabbages. Something magical began to happen among the villagers. As each person opened their heart to give, the next person gave even more. And as it happened, the soup grew richer and smelled more delicious. Oh, they brought more and more. They brought yams and beans and all kinds of, and corn, and even a big cauliflower. This soup is getting better and better all the time. The monks stirred and the pot bubbled. How good it smelled. How good it would taste. How giving the villagers had become from the beginning of the story. How different they are now. Oh, and look what happened to this village. At last the soup was ready. The villagers gathered together. They brought rice and steamed buns. They brought nuts and sweet cakes. They brought tea to drink, and they lit lanterns. Everyone sat down to eat. They had not been together for a very, very long time, and people couldn't remember when the last time they were together. After this banquet, they told stories, sang songs, and celebrated long into the night. Then they unlocked their doors and took the monks into their homes and gave them very comfortable places to sleep. Were they generous? They were so selfish in the beginning, and now they just turned into big-hearted people. In the gentle spring morning, everyone gathered together near the willows to say farewell. "Thank you for having us as your guests," said the monks. "You have been very generous." "Thank you," said the villagers. "With the gifts you have given, we will always have plenty. You have shown us that sharing makes us all richer." "And to think," said the monks, "to be happy is as simple as making stone soup." Isn't this a perfect story for this Sunday's gospel when Jesus said, "I am the living bread, and anyone who comes to me, I will give you life forever." So, when we are able to start coming to Eucharist, to our Mass, we'll remember the story of stone soup and how when we come to the Eucharist, we bring ourselves and one another to share in not stone soup, but Jesus, who is our life forever. But that's not the end. I have another story called Rose Meets Mr. Wintergarten. Now, why would I choose this story for the celebration of the body and blood of Jesus? Let's see. Oh, I see some people moving into a new house right here. Maybe it's Rose, next to a big, big mansion. There it is. Rose Meets Mr. Wintergarten by Bob Graham. The morning the Summers family moved into their new house, they felt at home. Faith and Rose put up their pictures. Baby Blossom watched. And so we now know there are 3 children in this family. And here's their bedroom. There's Rose and her sister Faith and Baby Blossom. Mr. and Mrs. Summers planted pansies, petunias, daisies, and geraniums. Their garden was a carpet of flowers, all before the sun went down. You could see that they're making their new home a very, very special place. Wow. Every morning from the roof of their house, imagine sitting on your roof, the Summers watched the sun come up. The sun never touched the house next door. I wonder why. Next door, everybody bristled. Next door lived Mr. Wintergarten. Uh-oh. Can you hear the tone in my voice already? There were stories in the street about Mr. Wintergarten. "He's mean," said Emily. "And horrible," said Arthur. "He's got a dog like a wolf," said Naomi. "And a saltwater crocodile." Can it be? "They say he rides his crocodile at night," said Emily. "And gets ya," Arthur shrieked. "I don't believe you," said Rose. "Anyway, don't frighten Blossom." There's little Blossom, the little sister. "My dad lost his football over there when he was a boy," said Emily. "You can just see it through the prickles, old and flat as a pancake." "It's way over here. All those years and the football's still there?" "No one ever goes in there," said Arthur, "in case Mr. Wintergarten eats people." How could that possibly be? "If your ball ever goes over," said Naomi, "forget it." And just then, Rose's ball went straight over Mr. Wintergarten's fence. Well, you could say so long to the ball. Rose went to tell her mom. "Well, Honey Bunch," Mom said, "you can get your ball back. Why don't you just go and ask Mr. Wintergarten?" "Because he eats kids," said Rose. "We'll take him some cookies instead," said Mom, "and maybe some flowers." Mr. Wintergarten's front gate had not been opened for years. Rose heaved and pushed. The gate groaned and squeaked. Then slowly it swung open. Can you imagine a gate that hasn't been opened for years? Oh dear. Rose could see that there was a dog, big as a wolf. "I don't see any crocodiles," she said. "I should hope not," replied Mom, and threw the dog a cookie. Rose knocked at Mr. Wintergarten's door. "Who the devil is that?" shouted a voice from inside. "It's me," said Rose, and tiptoed in. Look at Mr. Wintergarten and look at Rose. "What do you want?" said Mr. Wintergarten. "I'm Rose Summers from next door. I've come to ask for my ball back." She twisted her fingers in her handkerchief. "I've brought some flowers and cookies from my mom." Mr. Wintergarten glared at her. "Look, there he is at this long table, and here's little Rose." His dinner was cold, gray, and uninviting, with grizzle floating in it, and mosquitoes breeding on top. But Rose could see he wasn't eating children. That's a relief. "Please, may I look for my ball?" she asked. "No," growled Mr. Wintergarten. "Go away." But when Rose had gone, Mr. Wintergarten slowly pushed back his chair and did something he hadn't done in years. What could that possibly be? He seems very grumpy and not very friendly. Mr. Wintergarten opened his curtains. There he is. He hadn't opened those curtains in years. He sat on his front step in the sun. "No one ever asked for their ball back," he said to himself, "or brought cookies to me." He saw Rose's ball and thoughtfully pushed it with his toe. Maybe he was a former soccer player, who knows? Next, he made some darting movements that made his coattails fly in the sun. And then Mr. Wintergarten kicked the ball, oh my, right back over the fence into Rose's arms. Look at that. Great kick, said Rose. Nice catch, said Mr. Wintergarten. Would you mind throwing back my slipper? He asked. He lost his slipper in the process across the fence. Now Rose is going to have to throw it back. Catch, Mr. Wintergarten, said Rose, throwing back the slipper. Good throw, Rose, said Mr. Wintergarten. Let's play again tomorrow. And guess what happened? Look at what happened. All the kids in the neighborhood from that day on came and played with Mr. Wintergarten and each other. Little Rose changed everything by her kindness to Mr. Wintergarten. And maybe that's the message of this Sunday too, that when we come to Mass and we receive Jesus, coming together as one family of God, we too are changed and asked to go forth and help others. And that maybe we can share our food with so many in New York City, in the Bronx, in Harlem, places where they don't have enough food. And that's going to be my message to your moms and dads, that we could start some neighborhood collections so that we too can help others, just as Rose helped Mr. Wintergarten, and the monks made stone soup. And so I ask you, and I hope that we'll see each other at Mass very soon. Thank you, and God bless you.